Okay, well, it's 11 o'clock and let's get started. Good morning. My name is Jan Schmitz from the Edmonton Pride Seniors Group. It's February 3rd, and thank you all for attending our weekly Aging with Pride discussion group for the LGBTQ2S+ seniors and their allies. Thank you too to our partners, SAGE and the Pride Center of Edmonton. Before I introduce our speakers, I must acknowledge that we are located on Treaty 6 territory and respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our lives. And now, and with great pleasure, I would like to introduce our guest speaker. Lindy Pratch spent 27 years helping people find a good book and was the one who created the award-winning Rainbow Spine program to identify LGBTQ2S+ material. Lindy, please.
Hi, thanks, Jan, and hello, everybody. I see some familiar faces here. It's nice to see you. So, I was born in 1960. I grew up on a farm about 200 kilometers northeast of Edmonton. I moved to this city in order to go to college. I got a diploma at MacEwan in library and information science or technology in 1981. And I worked at Edmonton Public Library from 1989 until, 1986. Anyway, until 2015. I'm retired now. So what Jan was saying about helping people find books, a good book to read, that's what we call reader services. And I've always been really passionate about that because I like to read and I like to share that joy of reading with other people. And so this informed some of the work that I did at the library. But before I get into that, I just want to let you know that I have a brain injury right now. It's been 8 weeks since I got a concussion when I was curling, and I'm still dealing with symptoms from that, including vision impairment and cognitive impairment. So bear with me. Yeah. But I will be happy to answer questions at the end. So I started out helping people find gay and lesbian fiction with a bibliography. So this was in the early 90s, and I put together a bibliography of all of the books in the Edmonton Public Library collection that had gay, lesbian, and bisexual content. At that time, I don't even know if I was aware of any trans or other type of queer content, but for sure those three. And to fit my criteria, I was looking for either a main protagonist or an important secondary character in a novel that was queer. And yeah, so that was basically my criteria for inclusion. And got the idea about putting rainbow spine labels on the backs of books to make it easier for people to find them on the shelves. Now, the library was already using spine label kind of sticker things for, they had Canadian flag for Canadian fiction. We had mysteries and science fiction and fantasy marked that way. And I was in a, what do you call it? It was like a message board kind of thing with other gay and lesbian librarians across North America. And they talked about different ways to identify books. And at that time, the pink triangle was actually a popular sticker. Some people said, in some libraries, they said they couldn't use rainbow stickers because they used that for the Christian fiction. But now the rainbow flag is so closely connected with queer culture that it seems even odd to think back on that time when it wasn't. So anyway, we went with a rainbow spine label, and it was a pilot project just at the Southgate branch, which was the branch that I worked at. It was very popular with patrons. We had people coming from across the city, specifically to Southgate Library, because they knew that they could find books there. And I remember my manager, was Joanne Greiner, she asked me if I was going overboard on putting these stickers on these books, because she said she had pulled off fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. And she said, why did you make this one a rainbow sticker book? And I said, did you read it? And she said, no, but I saw the film. And I said, well, that's very different. Yeah. Anyway, 3 other libraries said that they wanted to also, participate and expand the pilot project. So that was going to go ahead, including the main library and Londonderry branch. And I can't remember who the third additional library was. But before that started, there was an all managers meeting. And when this project was discussed, it was totally quashed. One manager in particular was homophobic and managed to sway everybody else using arguments like, well, people are going to be afraid to pick up these books because they'll be identified, as being queer if someone sees them checking out a book with a rainbow sticker on it. Anyway, the outcome was actually positive, and that is that Edmonton Public Library decided to start subject cataloging for all of the fiction collection. So using Library of Congress subject cataloging, it would be possible in the library catalog to see if there was gay or lesbian content based on these Library of Congress subject headings, and many other subjects, besides. So that was really good. It didn't help for physical books if you were just browsing the shelves, but being able to see in the library catalog if there was gay books, that was really good. And another outcome was it gave me lots of opportunity to educate my colleagues. So for example, one of my colleagues came to the back and she was sort of laughing about, she said, this little old lady with white hair, she picked up a book with a rainbow sticker on it and she checked it out and she said, who knows what she's going to think when she gets home with it. Well, I had seen that woman and I said, Sprucewood is her branch. She told me that she comes here especially for the rainbow spine labels. And just because she's got white hair doesn't mean she's, not a lesbian, so the assumptions that my colleagues were making about who looks gay, that challenged that preconceptions. And I also did a lot of paper book lists related to the bibliography project and the rainbow spine labeling project. So people could pick up a book list and see some titles in there, and they were in more narrow categories, like historical gay and lesbian fiction, for example. And at that time, there was just one librarian who worked downtown, and it was her responsibility to approve all of the paper book lists. And we did have, I would call them run-ins, I guess, but it was an opportunity for education there too. So for example, she objected to a book list that was AIDS fiction. because she said we would have to have every disease, a book list for cancer, a book list for diabetes. But I did persuade her in the value of, well, number one, bibliotherapy for people who wanted to see their experiences in the fiction that they were reading, but also for readers who needed to escape that reality, and they wanted to enjoy fiction but not have to be confronted with something that might be really difficult for them if they were experiencing AIDS in their own lives. So yes, so we did have that book list. Another one, you know, I tried to have a little bit of a fancier title for the book list, and I called it Recent Dyke Fiction. And she was like, no, she said, that word makes me want to vomit. And then she said, you know, you'll catch more flies with honey. And I said, it's not a recruitment project. But I did change the title to Recent Lesbian Fiction. Anyway, so that just gives you a bit of an overview of kind of what was going on then in the mid-90s. And I even framed that Pride Award. There you go. Because I was quite proud of having done that and made a difference for people. So, do any of you have questions?
If you want to ask Lindy directly with your questions, or you could put them in the chat box if you wish.
No, directly, because I have problems with the typing.
So I see Joan has a question. Joan, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, Lindy. It's not really a question, but I remember going to the libraries with a question saying, you know, do you guys have any gay and lesbian books? And be like, gee, you know, and this really vague response and embarrassed response. And I remember hearing about your project and I was so thrilled. I went and it's just like bags of books coming home to me. So thank you.
Thanks, Joan. That's good to hear.
And I believe Ace had a question. Ace, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, I really enjoyed the books that were read to me by my ex. First of all, I'm transgender, but I lived for 30 years as a lesbian, and she would read Jane Rule to me and everything. As a dyslexic person, are any of these books onto audio tape yet?
Oh, that's a great question, Ace. Yes, there are lots of them.
I would look for transgender books at this point.
You're interested in transgender fiction?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you're on the Edmonton Public Library, oh, I should just check. Is Edmonton Public Library your home library, or do you live somewhere else?
No, I'm here in Edmonton on the West End.
Great. So on the Edmonton Public Library catalog, you can search for transgender fiction, and you can narrow it down to audiobooks, either in CD format or in digital e-audio format.
That's good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Michael, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Lindy. Lindy, nice to see you as well. Lindy, have you seen or are you aware of changes within the library since the 2000s, more recent times? I know you're retired now, but you were there for quite a bit of this period of time as well.
So what kind of changes?
In terms of how librarians would respond to questions about gay, lesbian, etc. Books or material that they might be looking for or whatever?
Yes, there's definitely been a change for the better. It reflects what's going on in Canadian society. And I would say that Edmonton Public Library has been pretty much at the vanguard too. There tend to be a lot of very progressive people working at the library. Not everybody is, you know, it is a microcosm of Canadian society. So if it happens that you go to the library and you have a bad experience that you can pretty much guess might have to do with, you know, that your question has something to do, say, with you're looking for transgender fiction, don't stand for it. Because, yeah, I mean, there are plenty of staff at Edmonton Public Library who would welcome that question, and even if they don't know the answer, they'll find it for you and they'll assist you in helping to find what you need.
And do you think that's fairly across the board in terms of the branch libraries as well?
As far as I know, you know, I mostly go to the Jasper Place library because it's closest to where I live. And I know that there are trans staff members at some of the other libraries. So yeah, in general, I would say that it's a welcoming place. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Lindy, I have a question. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 2014 when the Edmonton Public Library won the International Best Library in the World. Was it 2014? Do I have that right?
It was 2013 or 2014, something like that. Yeah.
Was your program part of the reason why we got this international recognition?
I doubt it.
Okay.
Because this, the Rainbow Spine Label thing, that was way back in about 1995, 1996, 1997. We're talking back in the days of dot matrix printers, and you know, we didn't have personal computers to work on at the library. Oh yeah, we did have one Wang computer, and that's what I used to type up the bibliography. But our, you know, the communication that I had with other queer librarians across North America, it was, you know, with Unix, you know, typing that type of email where if you type too many characters, then it just disappears because you have to remember that you can only have so many characters in a line. Yeah.
Thank you. Larry, did you have a question for Lindy?
It's perhaps more a comment than a question. I was born in 43, so we're well before printers, computers, any sort of thing. And I grew up in a very small town, north of here, 1,800 people. And I remember, I remember most strongly, was the complete lack of information. And in the process of attempting to come out or wondering just what was going on and so on, how vital the library was, because it wasn't something that I felt comfortable talking to any person in that town. That would be a later step. But I just want to salute how important the work that you have done. Certainly it was then, I expect still is. Mechanisms may have changed a bit, but thank you for that.
Anybody else? Roy, please go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning, Lindy. I'm just wondering, is the Edmonton Public Library associated at all with the Pride Center? Because one of the previous calls, we heard that the Pride Center had about 1,000 gay and lesbian books that they needed to get rid of, and they didn't have any takers. Is that something that they could pursue, is approaching the Edmonton Library to take on those books?
Good question, but I would say the answer is no. The Edmonton Public Library is focused on current popular material, and I believe that all of these books that the Pride Center has that they're looking to find a home for tend to be older titles or more obscure. So it would be more like an archival kind of situation, and that is exactly opposite of what you'll have at the Edmonton Public Library. Does anybody else have comments on that?
Yes, I do. Why don't they have a book sale?
We can ask Don Carter that. We can bring that forward. That's a good idea.
A book sale? Yeah.
I think they're actually giving them away, but Larry, you had a question or comment?
I just wanted to make a point, and I'd be interested in Lindy's opinion. Gay GLBT history is not well documented, and an archival material of things that were popular whenever would be enormously important. I'm not suggesting it's the Edmonton Public Library's job to do it, but to preserve that archive strikes me as being something that would be important. Do you agree, Lindy?
I do, but it would be something that would require space, care, and attention, and so I don't know where that would happen. Yeah,
Perhaps a grant for the history of the queer community.
Eric, did you have a comment?
Yes, and this might not be a fair question for you, Lindy, but as you watched the Edmonton public sort of expand their consciousness or their acceptance, did you have conversations with other librarians across the province, like Calgary or Red Deer or more remote locations, on what their feelings were about having more inclusive material in their libraries or labeling the inclusive material?
Informal conversations, yes. And I would say that in general, people were really, on board. Yeah.
I think just as a comment, one of these things that I've always wanted to do if I ever went back to school was to do a study on how institutions gradually open up, usually with a champion like yourself or other people, and slowly you start to see the organizations open up. And it's been really interesting to watch just as an observer of seeing different institutions around town. But yeah, that was just a quick question. Thank you.
Lindy, can you tell us about receiving the Pride Award? Like, who did that come from? Was it like with a whole group of people? Who presented? Who was behind nominating you? Like, what was that like to get that award? I know it's a little while ago.
Yeah, it's too long ago. I can't blame my concussion for that. It's just my bad memory. Yeah, no. I remember that the ceremony was at Convocation Hall, the U of A. That's about
Would they have given out a lot of awards on that day?
Yes, they had a Michael Fair Award, and Michael. Yes.
Just to have Lindy, that I would add that for a period of time, initially started, I think, by Gate way back in the 80s. There was some work done to put together some awards for the community. I don't think any of that happened until nearly 1990, kind of thing, and then became part of Pride events. And during Pride Week, there would be an event at a location, sometimes at City Hall, I know some years, it varied where it was location was, where these awards would be given out. What the awards were named and that, et cetera, changed over time. But there was essentially an award for individual male, individual female for some reason. And one of them was called Michael Fair, and one was oh shoot. It'll come to me in a minute. And then there was an award for business that was gay or lesbian. There was awards for what were considered allied groups or organizations. There were also awards for special events that took place in the community during that year that were recognized. And this group was the group that organized that as part of the Pride events. And they would send out asking for nominations for anyone could fill in, but they would send that to different groups and organizations in the city to bring forward nominations. And then the committee would take a look at who was who was nominated, and then make a decision on who would receive the award, kind of thing. And so yeah, Maureen Irwin, thanks. The Maureen Irwin Wood. How could I forget? I'm stupid me. That's what happens when the brain gets older. Got to think of that. Yes, and so someone nominated you, Lindy, for the work at the library, partly because it was also considered an institution that we wanted to recognize as well. I don't remember who nominated in that. I'm not sure I was on the committee that year. I was on that committee a couple of times, but not always, kind of thing in that as well. And it was always a bit of a ceremony with it, and trying to make a little hoopla out of it as well. And that as Lindy indicated, because I was there that year too. I remember you getting the award. I mean, I attended. I didn't. I wasn't getting the award, but I was there in the audience because I remember you got the award. Thanks.
Am I the only one in this group who doesn't know about these awards? Sorry about that. Maybe we need an educational session on these Pride Awards, so some of us can catch up to the rest of you.
I don't think anybody is doing that anymore. That was always for many years. It was always done in connection as part of a Pride event, and now that there isn't Pride events, that they really have kind of ended. In addition, the names changed. They no longer were the awards weren't named for an individual like the Michael Fair Award. They became award for community work, etc. Youth award, etc. Some of that they got rid of that, and that was more recent. However, I don't think there's anybody doing that these days, except the court. I mean, the court awards people has every year they've awarded awards. They award lots. They give out a lot of awards. I have a princess. I have an award from them as an honorary princess, kind of thing, one year that they gave out. And believe me, they give out awards to anyone and everyone.
Well, thank you for that education. Appreciate that. Does anyone else have any comments or questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ace.
Yes. I think that I kind of have this daydream fantasy about when people are seniors, like when we get older and we go into this kind of rainbow type lodge for care, for seniors care, and somebody's reading a book to us and they read something like Desert of the Lonely Hearts or whatever, and it takes us back to the time where, like for me, when I was a lesbian in the 70s and early 80s and met my lesbian wife at that time, being with her for 18 years, there was a lot of experience in history that if our history isn't preserved, how well are our seniors going to be preserved? I mean, it's part of our culture, and I think that maybe the libraries could get a grant based on the fact that we don't want all the everything washed away. It's not like even the changes in the community that happened during the AIDS crisis affected everybody in the queer culture. I lost some male friends to that, unfortunately. And I think that just to have that, like those books, they collect dust and then they're sold or they're gone, or private collection or whatever. We won't have access to our history and her story. So I don't know. Look, is a grant possible if it's for preserving history?
That's that is important, I think. But I should point out that classics, like some of the Jane Rule books, for example,
Mhm.
or Andrew Hollerhand's Dancer from the Dance. There are titles that I think will continually be available. They'll stay in print,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
as copies wear out, the library can get new copies, and so there will be, I think, continued access. Maybe in ebook format, if not in print format,
Yeah.
or audio format might be a possibility again, but not every single book.
Yeah.
Right?
The more popular books, yes.
Yeah, there are as with all literature, there are books that stand the test of time, and so I can see some of those still being available. Arsenal Pulp Press has brought back into print some titles by no, her name escapes me right now. New York writer Sandra. Someone help me here. Anyway, that there are some titles that
Mhm.
that deserve to stay around, and
Yes.
they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like everything is lost.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
Is it Fran Leibowitz?
No,
Is it-
that's not who I was thinking of. Her
Okay.
name will come to me. But okay, so going back to AIDS fiction, so there was, I would say, a sort of a little flowering of AIDS fiction in the 90s, and then almost nothing for a long period of time. But in the last 5, maybe 10 years, especially in the last 5 years, I've seen a lot more really high quality novels come out looking at the early period of AIDS. Yeah. So like Rebecca Mackay's The Great Believers, for example. So yeah, it's there.
Larry, did you have a comment?
I was thinking, and I was pleased to see that the library actually had it still available, the novels of Mary Renault, who I suspect a lot of gay men of my age, these were the first novels that presented a more or less positive view. And her biography, she was a lesbian nurse actually, who lived much of her life in South Africa, is itself interesting as well. I had always assumed it was a synonym for a man, but in fact, she was indeed female. But those books are still available in the library, and while they may not have enormous literary merit, they've got a certain affinity with romance fiction and so on. They were important at the time for the people. But I also was going to ask about movies and so on. It struck me during the early AIDS period, there were any number of movies, and the library obviously collects audiovisual stuff and so on. Were they included in your lists and something analogous to the Spine Project?
I didn't include movies in that initial bibliography. However, we had online bibliographies of gay and lesbian movies starting in about the early 2000s. So once that became a possibility with the type of library catalog we had, we did have access to movies also. Yeah. And I finally remembered this author that I was trying to think of, Sarah Schulman.
Oh, yes.
She is still writing, but some of her early, more classic titles have been brought back into print as well.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Larry, did you have another?
Just one more thing. The other thing that interests me are GLBTQ authors who may not be writing specifically on gay subjects, but their sensibility is reflected. And I wonder whether those sorts of things, I would think, for example, take Stephen Sondheim's as an example.
Yeah, those kinds
They'd
of
be harder to get, obviously.
well, harder to pick them out.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So, if you are looking for, who's a gay author, a popular gay author, you can probably do, a Google search.
You can Google
and get
all
up
these
names
things.
that way, and see what kind of books they're writing. They might not have gay or very much gay content in them, but if you're a reader, you're probably used to looking for that subject.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? I see Ace, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
They had a reading program with the drag queens reading stories. What happened with that, or do you know anything about that? That was after you retired, though.
That's correct. And I think that they've had some online story times with drag queen storytellers during COVID. So I would imagine that once the in-person story times resume, that there still will be drag queen story times. But that's just a guess.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Good to hear that.
Go ahead, Larry.
I expected the first question would be about censorship and attempts at censorship. And I wondered whether you had any comments you wanted to make about that fraught subject.
Well, that was also one of the reasons why, I would say a spurious reason why at that all managers meeting, some people said, well, if we have, these books labeled, then it'll be easy for people to just, pull them and, just never return them, or in some way, censor them from the library collection. It doesn't only happen with queer books. Witchcraft is one that the books are often stolen. But anyway, there may have been official challenges. There's paperwork to do. If you come across a book that you object to, there's a procedure to follow at the public library for it to be considered and reconsidered whether it belongs in the collection or not. And so, for example, I can remember there was a book about sudden infant death syndrome that had incorrect medical information in it, and somebody challenged that, and the book, was taken from the shelves. I do not know of any instance at Edmonton Public Library where it had to do with queer content. There may have been challenged books, but none that were removed for that reason.
That's good to know.
Well, I'd like to know if you made the curling shot when you fell and got your concussion.
Well, what had happened was I was at the wrong end of the ice because I had been watching the previous rock and see where it went. And then I had to sweep. So I was, quickly making my way back to sweep position, and I just slipped and fell. And I wear head protection because I've fallen and hit my head before when I'm curling. But it's this curling thing type of head protection that it's mainly at the back of your head that has most of the protection, and the side is more like neoprene kind of spongy stuff. And I hit the side of my head. So there you go. And I broke my wrist in a couple places too.
Ooh.
Not a good 2021. Well, last call for any comments or questions, anybody? Well, I see none, so I'd like to thank you very much, Lindy, for such an inspiring talk. And thank you as well to Kim Lauren for his signing and technical assistance. And thank you to all of you. I hope that we will see you all next week when our speaker will be Angel from Aspect. That's the Alberta Sex Positive Education and Community Center. I think that's another word for seniors dating, LGBTQ dating for seniors. So it should be a pretty good presentation. We'll be sending you a survey shortly. Please fill it out in the near future. And if you need to contact us, you can reach us at agingwithpride@pridecenterofedmonton.ca. And now I return our meeting to our host, Kim.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'll see you next week.
Can I say one more thing?
Please do.
I would be happy to put together a list of a few titles with trans content that are available in audiobook format for ACE.
Thank you.
If anybody else is looking for a personalized book list, maybe let the organizers know and they can get the message to me, because I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindy.
Thanks, Lindy. Bye.
Very kind.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.